Hey guys, it's Dan Rickard. Today we're going to be looking at overlapping action on primitive objects. So let's start. One of the things that it really just screams overlapping actions is something that a lot of us maybe have played with as kids, and that's dominoes. Okay, so I'm just really creating a kind of a simple domino here. It's not going to be perfect because there is an amount of spacing that has to go into this. But for the most part, I'm simply going to make a series of dominoes and talk about this overlapping action. I guess the one thing that I do want to just quickly set up is the pivot on here. So I'm going to move the pivot just to the edge slightly so it all rotates off of that edge and not necessarily in the center of. Essentially, this is a little bit of rigging right now. Okay, so there we go. We've got our dominoes. We're going to set off the local pivot for rotation. And if we try rotating these, you can see what's going to happen. Okay, they all rotate at once. If we select one and rotate it, obviously it rotates by itself and so on. If you select all of them, they're going to rotate. They're not grouped together. If we tried linking these together in a hierarchy of sorts by using the select and link, so let's say I parented that to that one. This one I can still rotate on its own, but as soon as I rotate this one, you can see what's going to happen. Also, notice that as soon as I rotate this, I've got this weird skewing effect happening, so there's some double transforms happening. We don't quite want that. Okay, so just make sure that that is undone. Okay, so we're back to where we were. We don't want these grouped together. So a really simple overlapping action is simply, it's an offset of the animation, where the animation of one object drives the other, and the other one kind of slowly comes behind it. So in this sense, this is the epitome of overlapping action, because really this one cannot move until this one goes first. Okay, so we have to wait. This is what I like to call reactive animation. So if I turn on auto key and I select each one or all of these at the same time, I'm going to hit K to lock in some values. And let's say at about, I don't know, keyframe 8, we're going to drop these down. Okay, so essentially there's our dominoes. Well, it's more like a window blind, right? If we kind of did this, it looks more like the blinds on a window, someone just shutting them and closing them here, or opening and closing. So essentially all we want to do is offset the animation. We want to have that overlapping action. So this first one isn't going to be offset whatsoever. It has to start at some time, so let's have it start at 0. Simple as that. But when do we start this one? And then when do we start this one? And so on and so on. So this one really has to start at contact with this corner onto this object. So if we just kind of eyeball this here, and as soon as that gets roughly to where that, I guess about keyframe 3, this would be roughly where that contact point would be. I'm going to take all of these and simply offset the animations to start at 3. So look, there's no animation now on these other ones until keyframe 3. So at that point, it's pretty close. We're gonna say that that's a contact for now. But at 3, it now goes into the falling animation. Okay, there will be a little bit of overlap, and like I said, there's some spacing that you have to do, but just to get the general idea of this overlapping action, just keep watching. So what do we do after this? What about these ones? Okay, so I'm going to deselect this one. Now I've got those. If we've offset the whole group by 3, how about we go another 3? Okay, so let's grab these keys. We'll go to 6. So let's scrub through and see what happens. Okay, so again, disregard these ones for right now. We're just focusing on the first couple. So that's all working. So, okay, great. Let's deselect the third one. Now I've got 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to offset those by another 3. Deselect the fourth, offset the 5th and 6th by 3. Deselect that one, offset by 3, and so on. There we go. So if you press play, you now have this little animation of a domino chain, kind of a daisy chain effect here. And it's really, really simple. So definitely an overlapping action of sorts. Okay, let's go on to the next part. Okay, so the next part, we want to look at some type of cattail. Some people call it seaweed. Either way, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to create a box. Pivots at the bottom, or really, we could always turn the pivot around, or turn the object around so the pivot's at the top. Whatever makes more sense to you, doesn't really matter. Let's just for fun, we'll turn this right around, so it's 180 degrees. Okay, and then I want to copy maybe 2 more. Make sure they're copied. There we go. So we've got a few boxes here. And just to make it a little more interesting, we'll just change the colors of these a bit. Maybe something like that. Maybe that one. There we go. Okay. So the red is going to be the top of our hierarchy, or the parent of the other ones. The yellow one will be the parent of the green one. Okay, so we need to make a little bit of a chain. So this hierarchy will be created by using select and link. So we're going to select this green one and link it to the yellow. So we click and drag, select and drag. Now think of this green one as a child of an actual parent. And this is the arm of that child, and he's going to go grab the parent's hand. So you need to stretch this kid's arm out and touch the parent. There you go. So now they're actually linked together. So this parent is maybe he's going to grab onto his dad, his grandfather, or the grandfather of the child. So anyway, he goes up here and grabs that guy. Now if you select the top one, it's all going to move. If you select the second one, the bottom 2 move, and obviously the bottom one just moves by itself. So we've got a little hierarchy. If you double click on the parent of the hierarchy, it selects the entire chain, which allows you to rotate all the objects at once instead of just a single object, like so. Big difference. If I double click this one, it selects both of these objects. You can see how they're both rotating. In contrast, if I select just a single one, you can see how that green one is no longer rotating. Okay? So what we want to do is have this kind of this back and forth action. We're going to work with overlapping action. We're going to work with offsetting the animation to help us with that. We're also going to use some out of range type animations just to help push this concept a little bit further. And then we'll see what we get out of this. Okay, so what I want to start off with is hitting auto key, making sure that that's on. And I've got all my objects selected. Remember, I can either select all of them by dragging a box, or I can simply double click the top. And I'll go to keyframe 0, and I can either press K to key in all the values, or I can right click on the timeline. And maybe I just want the rotation value, so I'm going to turn off position and scale and just click OK. So that's going to lock in those rotation values. Now, you can do that, it doesn't really have to. I don't even really want those locked in at a straight angle anyway, but I'm just showing you what you could do. So let's rotate these to the side. I'm going to rotate them about 40 degrees. Notice how they're all rotating to the side, about 40 degrees. Okay, so 40, 40, 40. So it's actually about 120 degrees that we're capturing, but in 40 degree segments. So I'm going to go to the middle of this, let's say 14. And I'll go 80 that way. So we've got 40 one way and then 40 on that side. And then for the last keyframe, let's say keyframe 20, I want to simply shift and drag this keyframe over to the other side. So one thing to notice here, my default in and out tangents are on linear at the moment. It doesn't have to be. I like to use linear and then smooth out later, and not just rely on the automatic. So a lot of people just rely on some of these other ones. I like to use linear as much as I can and then actually manually do stuff with it. Either way, just know what you've got on this, because it really, affects how you actually animate. So press play. We've got this very, very linear type of motion. Okay, obviously not what we want to do with it. So let's get into the curve editor and see what's going on. All right, so we've got some very, very linear type of angles in here. Really, the first thing I want to do is kind of grab them all, and I'm going to set tangents to auto just to see what that's going to do for us. Okay, so We've got kind of this smooth back and forth swinging. There's no overlapping action whatsoever. There's no drag on these objects. Essentially, this red one should be swinging back, let's say from right to left. That means this one is still going to travel a little bit farther and then catch up. And this green one is really going to kind of drag a little bit longer and then finally catch up while it's getting dragged along. Okay, so it's all about this overlapping action. And right now, they're all rotating exactly at the same time. So we need to offset these. So I'm going to actually go in with all of these selected. Let's go to Edit, Controller, Out of Range Types, and hit Loop. Okay. So we're rotating an X at the moment, and you can see how our X keys keep going on forever because we've got this kind of ghosting out of range key function curve here. And for each one of these, it's the same type of deal. Maybe a little bit more or a little bit less rotation depending on what we have selected. So what happens if we start selecting some of these and moving them? So I'm going to select the yellow one. Okay, got the yellow one. I'm going to take the X rotation of the yellow one and select all the keys here. And simply move it, let's say, 3 keyframes to the right. So I'm offsetting the animation. So in other words, that animation is happening slightly after the animation of the red, just like we did with the dominoes. How that second domino waited until the first one went. Well, we really want to offset this the same way. So we're offsetting it the same way. It doesn't quite look right because the green one is still following along at the same speed that the red one is. So we need to offset that one a little bit further. We've offset the yellow by 3. We need to offset the green by 3 and then an additional 3. So let's select that, X rotation, and then grabbing those keyframes, which we already have selected. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see what's going on with that. Now we'll press play and see what happens. Okay, starting to look much more fluid. It feels much looser. We definitely have a little bit of drag happening. So you can see how this red one wants to rotate already. So it's already kind of going from left to right as I drag through. But these ones are still going from right to left. So we definitely have that overlap happening. We could maybe push it a little bit farther in here. So let's try taking the yellow one and offsetting that a little bit further. 1, 2. And then the green one. 1, 2, 3, 4. See what happens with that. Okay, getting to be much looser. Okay, overlapping is really happening now compared to what we had at the beginning, and all it is a matter of offsetting your animations. Okay, so play around with this. Try increasing or decreasing the timing. You could always try going the other way and having it lead the animation, and that could give you some interesting effects. But it feels much more natural this way. It's got that really nice drag on it. Okay, so keep around or stay around and look out for the next video.